The initial celebrations of Tasmania's licence into the AFL has well and truly passed. The excitement has now turned to detail, and the devil is certainly present. Believe it or not, so much of sports is politics, and we are getting no better example of that than the current issues with the proposed Macquarie Point Stadium. The AFL made it clear to the Tassie government, no stadium, no team. Right now, things sit at an unclear stadium and therefore an unclear team. It's a critical 2025 for Tasmania and their hopes of getting an AFL team in the competition by 2028 and playing in a new stadium by 2029. In early to mid-January, you might have seen a bunch of articles or news stories from all different networks about the Macquarie Point Stadium. You might have brushed over the negative stories because the AFL has a contract with the Tasmanian government for their team and has already handed out a 19th licence. But there is a new sense of uneasiness despite formal contracts and agreements. This was mainly created by an independent report into Macquarie Point Stadium. The 170-page report was completed by economist Nicholas Gruen, who was commissioned to write the analysis as part of the minority Liberal Party's agreement with one of the stadium's biggest detractors and the Jackie Lambie network. Lambie has been incredibly vocal on her and others' displeasure of the stadium coming in, believing the money afforded to build the stadium, $375 million of which is from the Tasmanian government, can be better spent. Now, it is crucial to note that this is one economist's viewpoint. I'm sure down the road, if more reviews are done, there will be differing opinions than the ones of Gruen. This report is not the be-all and end-all of the economic viability of the stadium, but here are the key points, and they are not very good. The biggest flaw found in the proposal is with cost. That's no surprise. The total budget for the stadium is $775 million, split between the Tasmanian government, national government, AFL, and the rest to be paid by private investment, most likely in the forms of sponsors. According to Gruen, that is a laughable quote, and the stadium in reality will cost closer to $1.1 billion. The ABC, soon after the initial report, was able to get their hands on new documents breaking down the costs of the stadium and found that the roof itself, a key point in the building, will cost at least $207 million. For comparison, Optus Stadium in Perth cost roughly $1.6 billion and Marvel Stadium cost $460 million back in the late 90s. With a capacity of 23,000 seats compared to Optus Stadium's 60,000, that $1.1 billion mark does make sense. It is the single biggest concern with the plan, not one that has surprised anyone. The second alarming note was the benefit-cost ratio. In simple terms, this is the return you get back from every dollar invested. Now ideally, you want the ratio to be above $1. Gruen, through his own review, highlighted in the report that the benefit-cost ratio was just 44 cents for every dollar invested in the project. That is not good. The only by the way to this is that the Macquarie Point Development Corporation's detailed cost estimate had a benefit to cost ratio sitting at 69 cents for every dollar spent. Now that number again is still not great, but the 25-cent difference shows how varied these types of project analysis reports can end up. And the final big points are to do with the location and the initial agreement struck. Gruen labelled the process as hasty. The decision to locate the new stadium at Macquarie Point was effectively made by two parties, the Tasmanian government and the AFL. The site selection analysis released was hasty and partial and gives the strong impression of being crafted to support conclusions already made. Gruen also believed better and cheaper locations could have been chosen, and even went as far to say, the site selection process for the Hobart Stadium was flawed by its failure to prioritise community consultation, properly account for opportunity costs, and address critical urban planning trade-offs. This has likely led to the wrong site being selected. So basically nothing good came of the report. Now Gruen is in support of the team and the positive impact on the community it could have, but from all his research, he believes the stadium process has been rushed, not discussed by enough parties, and that the current budget is over $300 million short. His suggestions included extending a timeline for the stadium, which therefore means more negotiations with the AFL and a longer period of time playing at Bellarive Oval and York Park, a complete reanalysis of the stadium's total cost, and making the driving force of the stadium about the value, not just building it to get it done quickly. There are complications in these suggestions with the Tasmanian government's contract with the AFL, which does have penalties if the stadium is not built on time. If by 2027 it is not 50% completed, the government must pay the Devils $4.5 million, and every year the stadium is delayed, they will owe a further $4.5 million. However, the AFL has the right to waive these late fee penalties. In response to the Gruen report, the ABC said the Rockcliffe government had not been deterred. Upon releasing the report on Friday morning, Tasmanian Government Minister Eric Abetz said, "We thank Dr. Gruen for his work and in preparing the report." He then said the government was moving ahead with delivering the project. Now the opposition Tasmanian government still wants the side, which is important, and they are in support of a new stadium, but they are yet to fully pledge their support around the Macquarie Point location. This sense of confusion around cost isn't just shared in the community, but with those in politics who will need to choose a side sooner rather than later. If we throw in state debt, credit rating and economic growth in the mix, there are more and more complications the deeper you look. Right now, those outside of the Rockcliffe Liberal government believe the budget is not enough. After reading the report, Labor spokesperson Luke Edmonds said there were serious questions that need to be answered. Clearly the promises Jeremy Rockcliffe made about the cost cap are in tatters, so he needs to talk about how he's actually going to deliver this project. Tasmanians want to see the Devils running out, but when is that actually going to happen, and how much is this going to cost? This all leads into 2025, which is the most crucial year for the Tasmanian Devils. It actually feels like the football side will be the easiest part of the team's inclusion in the AFL. This seems to be the last shot for Tasmania to have their own side, and it will all come down to figuring out how a stadium will be built.